Bitcoin finds itself in a ranging market just at the upper end of its recent moves to the upside. In this video, we're going to be jumping down into the technical analysis for Bitcoin on the smaller timeframes, but we'll also take a look at the slightly larger timeframe and see if there's any major concerns there as well. As we get into the video, if you know what to do, smash that like button. I do appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, subscribe and do not miss another video by tapping the bell and selecting all the notifications. If you haven't joined us in Discord, guys, check it out. Linked in the description down below. It's a fantastic community talking crypto 24/7, and I don't think you'll be disappointed by what you find down there. Okay, let's get right on into this though, right? Because Bitcoin has been moving interestingly. We've seen some altcoins move up quite a bit recently, but Bitcoin's just kind of been static up in this upper area. So here we have Bitcoin paired up with USDT on the hourly chart, and Binance is our data source, right? And the obvious thing here, and I say it's obvious, it's only obvious if you know, I guess, is that we are coming up into higher highs, right? And this typically isn't a good sign. If I draw this trend line on here, you can kind of see that we have a couple of peaks just below it and a couple coming right on it. If I take it straight on to these actual lines, you can see that we're getting very close to retesting it for a third time. Now, this is okay. We can still bounce from this trend line and we can still go to the upside. But in relation to this lower trend line, we also need to be aware of any upper trend lines as well, so that we can kind of be focused in on what might be occurring here. Now, as we kind of come up into higher highs and higher lows like this, then essentially, unfortunately, these have a tendency to break down. Now, I don't think we're going to break down just yet. I still think we're going to bounce from this level and move up a little bit. Okay, that's kind of where I think, and that's what these two white lines represent. We're in this ranging market going sideways here, and we're waiting to see whether or not we breach this to the lower side. If we do, I don't think it's going to be long-lived. I do think we'll get that move to the upside, but don't be too surprised if we come down, liquidate some people, and then move on up, right? And this is why trend lines are, at least in my opinion, not the best technical analytical tool that we can use. They're the easiest things to draw, but unfortunately they fail on us quite a bit as well. Okay, specifically if we do use them incorrectly. So here it's an interesting one. If we can move up from here, and then we can peak up above this white line, then that's great. We'll probably find resistances and move down. I do not think that that's the right place for this. If anything, we're probably going to have to look at this more maybe from somewhere in here to try to get it to be a little bit more parallel to the bottom. But I think we're going to breach above this area and we're likely to see a move upwards. Now, from an Elliott wave theory point of view, we can see that we are in a three-wave structural point to the upside. I spoke about this on Twitch this morning, and you can see that we could move up into this higher range, anywhere really between 23,335 and 23,536. If I draw on a little yellow box, you can kind of see it right in here. This would be where our expectations on our C wave would be. So if I go ahead and draw in three waves, I'll just use A, B, C for this, A, B, and C coming up here. That's kind of where you would expect it to go. And you could kind of see that we could come into resistances on our trend line and it's drawn this way, for example. Okay, so we want to kind of be aware that this is an area of obvious resistance. Now, if I throw on the HTF liquidity, you can also see right up here on our trend line, if we were to move up here today, would basically be grabbing a lot of liquidity. Okay, this liquidity comes from this little wick high here as well. You can see all the white, that's the liquidity that's already been grabbed, and we can see there's no real requirement to come on down here. There's not a lot of liquidity to come and grab. So I do think we have to move on up, and I do think this is a liquidity that is going to get kind of swallowed up here. So my expectations are that we do come up here. But, until we kind of prove one way or another, it's both are technically possible. So the other one that's going on here is that we do have a subwave count inside here. That means that we can kind of see that moving up. But inside that area, we do have a potential for a subwave. And this subwave looks like it could take us down a little way and breach this white line at the lower side, which is 22,654. I think that's less probable considering our momentum indicator is oversold. So I do think that there's a higher probability of a move to the upside after the recent pull to the downside so far today. Just liquidate all those people going long before actually taking the price to the upside, essentially. After all, liquidity hunting is a pretty big game when it comes to cryptocurrency. So it doesn't surprise me that price moves down before it moves up and moves up before it goes down, essentially. Do be aware that you want to make sure that you're on the right side of these things. And sometimes patience does actually pay dividends. So kind of keep an eye on that. But essentially here, it does look like this is an interesting structure. Overall, though, this here, if we can breach it or bring up into this range up here at 23,300 approximately, it would actually put us in line with a double top right on here at this previous wick high. A double top would be bearish. It would mean that we'd look at this as a big A up here into B and then down into C. Now, if we can push up higher than this, and you can see other liquidity stacked in there, then actually that would mean that it would become invalid, right? We wouldn't have this structure to the downside. So essentially it would be a positive and we'll break on to the upside here, but we would have to push past $23,371.80 on the Binance chart here. So just kind of keep that in mind. Now, if I turn the liquidity off and throw on the order blocks, we can see that the sell order blocks are right inside there as well. Okay, so our sell order blocks and our liquidity all stacking up together to tell us that this area, according to 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗧𝗏 theory, at the 23,332 and 23,536 would be our selling zone. So if we follow smart money concepts, 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗧𝗏 theory, all these things are stacking up together to tell us that this is where the sellers are going to be, and this is the most likely point of failure for BTC as it tries to push up higher. So when we kind of stack this stuff up against us, we're kind of looking for, things that are going to confirm our wave counts. In the case here that we are moving up in 3 waves, we're looking at the liquidity to see what's going to go on there. We're looking for those order blocks. Are there loads of sellers in that particular area? And it does to me look like this is an area that we're going to have to visit in order to kind of get rejected from, grab as much of that liquidity as possible before moving in the opposite direction. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see how it plays out. Being oversold on our hourly chart the way that we are, and really trying to find support on our trend line at the bottom here. But, I think it's also possible before we have that run that we do create a little bit more downside to grab as much liquidity as possible. As I said, there doesn't appear to be much there, but again, this is subject to change depending on the different platforms that you're on, so kind of bear that in mind. As I record this video, you can see that we're just testing this once more. And if we do breach this, it's not the end of the world. It just means that we're coming down before we go up, and that's pretty common in the space as well. Okay, but I do think we're going to have to come up here and visit the 23,300, 23,500, regardless of where we end up coming down here lower than 654 before we could move up. Both those things can happen. It doesn't mean there's an invalidation occurring. Okay, so kind of keeping a close eye on it all overall. Now, as we come up into the 4-hourly chart, you can see that actually, there's loads of progression to the downside and upside midway through here. Doesn't really give us confirmation of either direction or move. Obviously, high highs, high lows do break down, so I am looking for a breakdown, but I'm not looking for that until we push up a little bit higher overall. 4-hour chart from a stochastic point of view, not conclusive. The 8-hour chart also not conclusive. 12-hour not conclusive. 16 hours does show us with the move to the upside. So does the 20-hour, and the daily obviously is incredibly overbought, looking for that move to the downside. So overall, not looking positive on the larger time frames, which brings me to the weekly chart here. Now, this one is Bitcoin paired up with USDT again. Binance is still the data source. Weekly chart is our time frame, and you can see that we have still got this area of resistance to push on through. This is going to be the major barrier for Bitcoin. This is the 200 weekly moving EMA, moving average, the exponential moving average, the EMA, on the 200 weekly candle stance. Now, this is an area that has been resistance for us. I speak about this a fair amount. You can see it right up here in this previous area, which was 24,300 to 24,500. 24,300 to 25,200. That's the one I was looking at there. So this one was our resistance blocker, and it was a resistance because of our 200 EMA. Over here, we can see that we haven't yet tested the 200 EMA that's currently rocking at about 23,700. Now, if I come back to my original chart here, come over to our hourly chart, throw on that order block, you can see right in here, 23,400 to 23,500 approximately is going to be that interesting zone. And so it's not a coincidence that our 200 weekly moving average also happens to be right in that $23,000 range, right on top of that order block and our 3-wave subwave count within our hourly chart. It also happens to be where the liquidity is stacking up. This means that this area is highly likely to be an area of failure, not just on the hourly chart, but on the weekly chart as well. You can see the death cross between the 50 EMA and the 200 EMA hasn't yet played out, and there's actually probably quite a bit of time before that actually does. And these things are laggy anyway, as in it's only going to tell you what's already happened, not going to tell you what is going to happen. So whenever that does eventually cross, which I do think it will, we will eventually see a lot of negativity in the press and lots of fear kind of being being spread, but actually I think that'd be the buying opportunity more than anything else. So when we take a look at this right now and we kind of see people getting a little bit too greedy with themselves, this to me tells me that, yeah, we're probably going to be looking for failure around here. Now, from our weekly stochastic RSI, you can see that we're up in this overbought area. We can be up here for a while, we sure can, but essentially I'm not optimistic about how this is currently looking overall. I would be very, very concerned about a move to the downside very soon. So a message that I've often said is that there comes times in Bitcoin's movements. I said this before and I'll say it again. Up here, when we had our lows of about $32,000, I was saying when we got to about $47,500, we should probably be thinking about what we want to do. Do we want to come out and do we want to book profits? I said the same thing down here, right? We're moving up nicely in from the June lows up highwards, towards our $25,000 level, saying it doesn't last forever. We're likely to come on down. It's probably time to start thinking about taking profits. Okay, we move on down and we can see that we did find support here. FTX took it down into new lower lows. We're right up in this same point again, right? Great buying opportunities and great opportunities to be thinking about maybe booking some of those profits, locking them in and seeing where things go. Whether you believe the bottom is in or not, it doesn't matter. You can't move up in straight lines forever. Just look at how many percentage points have been made so far from these lows to here, 51% for Bitcoin. From our June lows up to the August highs was 43%. And up here from our January 2022 lows up into our March highs, it was 46%. Okay, so do be aware that you're up in the higher area now, and this is usually a point where we start, greed starts to get the better of some people. So really think about what it is that you want to do. I'm not a financial advisor. I can't give you financial advice. All I can say is this market is incredibly fragile on these large timeframes, and we might want to start thinking about what we want to do with our positions in many of these altcoins and in Bitcoin. I'm going to leave the video right there though, guys. If you found it useful and informative, smash that like button. I do appreciate that. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, tap the bell, select all the notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept up to date with absolutely everything that we do here at Cheeky Crypto. With all that said, done and out of the way, hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.